To get logged in, and we'll get started in just a moment.
Right. Good. Well, it's still morning, I guess. Good morning, everyone. Nazia, assalamu alaikum.
Good morning.
Right. Good morning and welcome, everybody. Today we are talking about Eagle Chats and financial coaching. Welcome, Daniel Scholl, who is one of our financial coaches here at HCC, and he's going to be talking about all the types of services the financial coaches can help you with today. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Daniel Scholl. I'm one of the financial coaches here with HCC. I've been coaching. I've been doing financial coaching here at HCC for almost, I think it'll be 7 years in April. And I've been financial coaching in general for about 14 or 15 years. My background's in banking and retirement planning. I spent about 10 years in industry. I worked in a bank for 5 years and then a retirement planning company for 5 years. I was registered as an investment advisor. It's not that I lost my license. You're not allowed to hold your own license in that industry. So once I left the industry, you have to surrender your license basically. But my point on all that is that if you have any financial questions, chances are I can answer it for you. There's 4 coaches here at HCC currently. I cover Central College, Online College, and Coleman College. And Jana has been gracious enough to work with me over the years and trying to make sure that the online college does not get left out in student services. So a little bit about what we do, and then I'll take some questions, and then we can talk about a little budgeting. So yeah, I work with students one-on-one. I in those one-on-one occasions, I really try to hit on just about anything that students ask. Students ask me questions about budgeting, money management, debt management, student loans. What am I going to do with student loans? Should I take student loans? What's the difference between sub and unsub? Should I consolidate? What about debt consolidation? Are there other ways to do debt management? What about credit? How do I establish credit? How do I improve my credit scores? First time car buying. I worked with a student last week. She's going to be buying a car for the first time on her own. Had a lot of questions about, what's it like going into a dealership, and, what questions should she be asking? What should she be avoiding, right? Cash car versus financing a car. Elderly parent care a little bit. I talk about just about anything financial. That said, there are a few things that I don't like talking about. Not a crypto fan. I do not like unregulated investments. And so people always do, students in particular seem to really want to ask a lot about that. And obviously I'm a little bit older, and, but I think beyond that, just the fact that it is unregulated just adds unnecessary risk. I mean, I know there's a ton of money to be made out there, but there's also a ton of money to be lost out there as well. Sometimes I kid with people that you should, before you invest in an unregulated currency, take like a history class that kind of focuses in on what happened to create the Great Depression in terms of like unregulated speculation markets here in the United States. So other than that, I'm pretty happy to talk just about any financial topic. We also talk to students about how to navigate through emergencies. Sometimes we're able to help students locate what's what I'm looking for here, Jana. Assistance, be it emergency assistance, be it through our Swoop to the Rescue program here at HCC, or finding resources outside of Houston City College. Now, I will just warn you, we do not have any sort of, I'm going to just put somebody on mute here real quick. There we go. Resources are getting really hard to find here in Houston. They have been really since COVID. Sometimes you might hear from a program chair or a dean or a professor, Oh, go talk to Dan. He has a huge sack of money and a magic wand, and he will solve all your financial problems. That is not the case. Just put that out there. But I might be able to refer you to some outside agencies. We could talk about the Eagle Market. We could talk about just different resources that are available. And that's kind of what we do as financial coaches. It could be as detailed or undetailed as you want. I've put together debt reduction plans for students that I can give them a month and a year that they'll have all the credit cards paid off. I've worked with students month to month on budgeting and tracking and things like that. And some students come in, they ask me a few questions, I answer them, and I never hear from them again. My point on all this is that really you're in charge. That's my philosophy on coaching. I'm not here to do anything for you except for meet you where you're at, find out where it is that you want to go, and try to give you the tools, the encouragement, and the knowledge to go from point A to point B. But ultimately, I'm empowering you to do your own actions and not really, knock down obstacles for you. Does anybody have any questions about what financial coaching is, or maybe what financial coaching is not, or anything that the services that we do provide for you here at HCC?
Nope.
That cut off a little bit. Hold on, let me get my chat open. I would like to know what types of scholarships I am eligible to apply for. I currently have a pending asylum case. Well, first and foremost, let me just say, I wish you the best of luck. I hope it works well. I know we don't discuss politics here at HCC, so I'm not discussing politics, but I know that this is maybe not the administration to be doing all that with. So we do wish you the best of luck. I would say that you need to get in contact with financial aid. I do work in the financial aid department, but I'm not a financial aid advisor. And I know that there are, depending where you're at in the process, there could be different things that are available for you. But that is such a specific question. I don't want to misspeak, and that's a little bit out of my expertise zone. You can stop by any financial aid office at any campus, or you can get onto our virtual lobby and speak with a financial advisor through there, and they will be able to tell you what's available internally. And then also on our website, and here, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And can you all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. All right, let me pull open a window here. Oh, bring that over here. So if you do go to the HCC website, hccs.edu, click on admissions and aid, and you come down, you'll see this page right here. It says scholarships. So we do have information regarding, the foundation. Those scholarships are closed. The ones that are automatically done by financial aid, you don't have to worry about that. But we also have information on how to find and apply for scholarships that are outside of HCC. And this is a really neat resource that we have here. You can see these sites. There's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of scams out there in the scholarship world. We have vetted, these are aggregate search sites, and well, except for the foundation here, but the rest of these are things that we've kind of vetted, so you can use those resources to find scholarships outside, and a lot of times those don't come with the restrictions in terms of being here on certain visas. I hope that answered your question for you. Cool, good question, thank you. All right, well, let's talk about some budgeting and some tracking. This is a good time, it's the first of the year. Everybody's got their New Year's resolutions. We're all going to lose weight. We're going to get our finances in shape. So one of the ways you get your finances in shape is to know where your money's going and what you're going to do with it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen once again. All right, and we're going to start this from the beginning. All righty. So we're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about budgets, tracking, and then I'll take any questions. So we're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about budgets. We're going to tracking. This is a witty little skit from Saturday Night Live, but I'm going to skip that for right now, just for time's sake. Look, the first thing you got to do is create your goals, okay? If you don't have financial goals, you're not going anywhere. I tell people, you kind of got to know what's going on before you go somewhere. You can't just, money just doesn't kind of happen. It's a tool, and you need a plan for it. You should have short-term goals. You should have long-term goals. You can have midterm goals, right? And they should extrapolate on each other. Now, what do I mean by that? So I said they should. They can. You can say, all right, my long-term goal is to buy a house, right? My midterm goal is to save for down payment. My short-term goal is to start working on my credit. And you can kind of see how those three things build on each other. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You say my long-term goal is to buy a house. My short-term goal is to buy a large screen television to watch the Super Bowl, right? I'll figure out where to house it later. Those are, they can be totally unrelated. But what I want to make sure is that they are your goals. They are not anybody else's goals. There are all kinds of people out there telling you what your goal should be. I'm going to tell you what your goal should be a little bit, right? Your parents have ideas about how you should have your finances set up. Your friends, influencers, advertisers, right? Everybody's going to tell you how to spend your money. Everybody wants to tell you how to spend your money, sometimes out of the goodness of their own hearts, and sometimes they want to tell you how to spend your money so that you will take your money out of your pocket and put it in theirs. The main thing you need to do is make sure that your goals are your goals and not anybody else's. Ask yourself why. Why is this my goal, right? My goal is to save for retirement. Why? Because I was told that's the right thing to do. I don't think that's a great answer. Understand really why you should be saving for retirement, right? Why is it the right thing to do? Make sure you really understand the why of what you're doing. And I think the best way to do that is to start with your values of you as a person, right? What are your values? I value travel. I value time spent with my family. I value, a peace of mind that comes with, insurance and retirement accounts. Peace of mind is not necessarily a goal, right? That's a value. Experiential travel, that's not a goal, that's a value, right? But from those values, you can extrapolate your goals. And I think that's the best way to goal set, because at the end of the day, that'll mean that your goals are reflecting your values. And if you extrapolate a budget from your goals, then your budget should really be reflecting how you want to spend your money, not how anybody else wants you to spend your money. I'm also a big believer in SMART goals. I'm sure you all have heard this before. I didn't make it up, but I have tweaked it a little bit. Your goals should be SMART. They should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Okay, you see normally it says relevant. I tried to replace it with realistic. For some reason it's squished up. So let's talk about what a SMART goal looks like. I might ask Jana, what's your goal? And she says, my goal is to be rich. And that sounds like a good goal, but what does that really mean? To Jana, that can mean $1 million in an emergency, in a retirement account. To me, that could mean $20 in my pocket at the end of the pay period, right? To somebody else, it could mean that I'm rich. My family loves me and I love them and I have great friends and, we have a house. I'm rich. I couldn't be richer. It's an idea. Rich is a concept, right? A specific financial goal would be to say, I would like to have $1,000 in an emergency savings account by the end of 2026. That's incredibly specific. And it's measurable, right? You can count out $1,000. You can't count richness. That's an idea. But $1,000, that's measurable. And it's attainable. It's an actual thing. You can hold on to $1,000, right? You can $100 bills, put it right in your hand. Realistic is kind of the interesting one here. When you were children, you were told you could be what when you grow up? Anything you want, right? Is that true? Not necessarily. I have a friend, he wanted to be an astronaut. That's all he ever wanted to be. He started wearing glasses in third grade. Guess what? He is not. He is not an astronaut, right? They wouldn't even let, back then, I think you can now, but back when he was, uh, in high school, looking into, how to become an astronaut for a career, you could even get in with corrected vision. So, it just wasn't going to happen. We talked about losing weight, right? Um, I can do anything. I can set my mind to, right? I'm going to lose weight. You know what? I'm going to sign up for a marathon in March. Could I do a marathon in March? I could not. You know what I could do in March? I could die running a marathon, but that's about it, right? We won't put that kind of negativity out there. I could end up like, passed out cold on the street and have to get in the little sag wagon. That's not good. The idea here is that we don't want to set ourselves up for failure. You know, I've had people talk to me about, I'd like to buy a house. Okay, when? In the next month or so. Well, nobody buys a house in the next month or so. Not if you're financing. You can't even get through the application process that fast. Let alone if you got any issues with your credit or anything like that. So don't set yourself up for failure. Be realistic when you're setting your goals up. Give yourself challenging goals, but make sure they are realistic, because otherwise you feel demoralized and overwhelmed. And last is time-based or timeliness. Now, to me, this is the great variable here. A couple of things are going on here. One, you need to give yourself a deadline, a start date and a deadline. When are you going to accomplish your goals? I'm going to save this $1,000 by the end of 2026. When are you going to start saving? I'm going to start saving on Monday, right? We're incredible procrastinators. We like to give ourselves a deadline of someday, right? Not Sunday, but someday. Someday I will be, debt free. When will you be debt free? Someday. No, that's not on a calendar. I need something on a calendar. You need to give yourself a calendar date, right? The other thing with timeliness is that it is the variable that may allow something to become realistic. No, I'm not going to be able to run a marathon in March, but maybe I could run a marathon in 2 years if I started training now. I'm not going to buy a house next month, but maybe you could buy a house in a couple of months. Maybe you can be debt free in 2 years, right? Always remember that timeliness gives you incredible flexibility as you're thinking about your goals and helping to make your goals more realistic. Does anybody have any? And I can't see what's going on right now. So Jana, if somebody drops a question in the chat, please read it out to me. If somebody wants to ask their question out loud, just take yourself off mute and ask your question. I'm going to pause right now. Does anybody have any questions about goal setting? All right. I've either done an incredible job or stunned you all into silence. So we'll go with a good job done, hopefully. All right. So once you think about your values as a person, and from that you can extrapolate your financial goals. From that, you're going to need to extrapolate your financial budget. Now, a few words about a budget. Nobody likes the word budget. I think budgets have a very negative connotation, right? It's full of what we cannot do. Hey, you want to go out this weekend? No, I can't go out this weekend. I'm on a budget, right? Do you want to do anything fun? No, I can't do anything fun. I'm on a budget, right? But the fact is that everybody's on a budget. A budget is actually not restrictive. A budget is simply how do you plan on spending your money? Even if you don't have a written down budget, you're on one. However your money's being spent, that was your budget. And here's why you do need to write one down. This is why you need to have a plan, because, are you in charge of the budget, or is the budget in charge of you? I'll give an example. I met with a nutritionist once. We started talking about diets. And again, a diet has a very negative connotation, right? What are you going to eat for lunch? Nothing good. I'm on a diet. I have to eat carrots. You don't have to eat carrots. She explained to me that everybody's on a diet. A diet is whatever you eat. If you eat nothing but cheeseburgers, you are on a cheeseburger diet. The deal is there's ramifications for that, right? Eventually, you'll be on a different diet because you'll be in the hospital, getting your arteries declogged, stents put in, and all that. If you don't really have a spending plan and your budget is just money running through your fingers, there's consequences to that, right? So rather than the negative connotation of budget, I want you to think of this as a spending plan. How do you plan on spending your money? Why do you need to have this plan? Well, first and foremost, this will help you know what your income and expenses are every month. You'd be surprised how many people don't even know what their income is. And income is any sort of money coming in. So this is, I think important to students. They say, well, I not really make a lot of money because I'm working only part-time, I'm a full-time student. But if you're receiving financial aid and you're getting a refund on that, that's income. If you're getting SNAP benefits, that's income. Okay. Income is anything coming in. All right. It's also going to help you control on how you use money, and it's going to help you accomplish those goals that you have set for yourself. So what goes on the budget, right? You're going to want to start with income. Start with your income. It kind of gives you, budget's more beyond than just spending. It's the whole picture. So start with how much money you're going to bring in a month. And then you're going to go to your expenses. And I want you to start with fixed expenses, right? These are things that don't change. Your car payment, your rent, right? The same dollar amount every month. If they do change, like your rent goes up for the year, well, that's not going to go, you'll know that for the whole year, your fixed expenses. After that, you're going to look at your flexible expenses. Now, these are things that could happen every month, but they change every month, right? Electricity goes up and down. Right now, electricity is down a little bit. Your gas bill is going to be up, right? Food is just going up every month. And it could be things too, like your savings, clothing. You may not buy clothing every month, but when it comes time to get clothing, you're going to need to put it on your budget. The short answer is everything. Everything goes on the budget. Anything that you might spend money on for that month. Next month is February. If you're in a relationship, you might want to put a little Valentine's budget line in there, right? March is spring break. You might, if you're going to do something for spring break, you're going to want to put that in your budget line. Those happen only one time. Everything you can think of for the budget, for the month, goes on the budget. All right. So your most basic, if you ever put a budget together, it's probably going to look something like this, right? You're going to start with your income, right? This person brings in $2,200 a month, and then they're going to do their fixed expenses, right? Their rent, their car payment, and pay yourself first, right? That means put money into savings. Most people want to try to put savings in at the end, but really you should put savings in at the beginning. You're working to make who rich? Yourself, right? Not anybody else. So make sure you don't save what's left over. Put that in first. Now, I will put a little asterisk on that right now and say, you're in college. If you can't save right now, it's okay. It's all right. And then you go into your flexible expenses like your electricity, water, gas, entertainment, dining out, groceries, right? Those are things that happen every month. And then think of one-time expenses. In this case, the example is medical, but like I said, it could be birthdays, it could be holidays. My car needs registration needs done. That happens only once a year. Try to think of everything. And then you add up all your expenses, you subtract it from your net income, and hopefully that's a positive number. All right, that's kind of the basic way to budget. But I'm going to show you what I think is a much better way to budget. This is what I call priority spending. Basically, what you should do, and I don't care if you're budgeting $1 or $100, $1,000, $10,000. I think everybody should budget this way. I want you to write down all of your expenses for the month, and I want you to put them in order of what is most important to take care of to least important to take care of. And when you run out of money, you draw a line and you don't do the things below the line, right? This is putting you in charge. This should reflect your values, your goals. Do not let anybody tell you how to put your list together, right? It's your list. You're in charge of it. Somebody tries to tell you how to put your list together, tell them to be quiet. All right. Now, that said, I'm going to tell you how to put your list together a little bit. I'm going to give you some ideas about groupings that you might need to think about. The first thing you're going to want to think about is your life critical needs. There are a few things that have to happen for you to stay alive, right? You need shelter, you need food, you need water, you need electricity, right? You may have to have some medicines that are incredibly important to stay alive. All right. These come first. These should be always at the top of your list. That seems pretty self-explanatory, but it doesn't always happen. And the reason why it doesn't always happen is because we don't have a plan in place. And when you're struggling to, make ends meet, right? You start feeling stress, you start feeling pressure, you feel overwhelmed, and it's very difficult to make rational decisions under that kind of stress. And so you've got a credit card company calling and yelling at you and say, fine, I'll just make a payment, just, get off my back, and then you don't have money for electricity. But if you have a plan in place, you can better navigate those things. Start with your life critical needs. That is not, however, the end of your needs. Next come what I call non-life critical needs, right? There are still things that need to happen. You still need to put money in savings. You still need to take care of transportation, right? Be that here on the metro or you have a car note. If you have a car note, you're also going to have insurance and gas. Everybody's got to have a cell phone these days. Everybody needs health insurance. You still have, you're in college, so you can get away with maybe, you don't have to wear a suit to class, right? This isn't the 1950s, but you're still going to need clothing. You still need to take care of your grooming and hygiene. There are still things that need to happen. The one I want to talk about in this category is there at the bottom, anything specific to you and your family. This is what makes the list your list, right? Everything on here up till now is kind of a universal truth. But the fact is there are things that are your priorities. I get people asking me questions like, well, what about giving money to my religious institution? Where does that go on my list? I don't know. I can't tell you that. That's between you and your religious institution and your God. And I do not get into those conversations, right? Where does my daughter's cheerleader camp go? I can't answer that question. Only you know that. You know how important that is or unimportant. You're going to have that conversation with your child. I'm not going to have that conversation. There are so many things, where does travel go? To some people, travel is like the ultimate luxury, and it comes at the very last. To some people say, that's the only reason I live for, right? I can't answer that. There are things that are really in your value set and your goal that this is what will make the list yours. All right. I just want you to kind of think in groups. All right. Let's start with my life critical needs. Let's start with other needs. And then finally, our obligations. This is when you owe people money. Now, just because this is the third set listed does not mean it goes third. It could go at the very top of your list. But there is an order to pay people back when you owe them money. And the first person you have to pay attention to is the government. The order here is basically who can take stuff away from you, and the government can take stuff away from you. And everybody always thinks I'm talking about the federal government, right? When I talk about this, everybody always thinks about Uncle Sam, but Uncle Sam has lots of nieces and nephews at the city, county, state, local school district, maybe, your homeowners association. There's some groups out there that you really need to pay attention to. The good news is, if you have the state of Texas or Harris County or city of Houston or, the federal government money, the good news is that they will work with you, right? They will set you up on payment plans. They will tell you about options. They might even forgive it. You never know. But that said, you have to talk to them about it. They won't call you up and offer that information. Where people really get in trouble with owing the government money is by avoiding the government at all and trying not to talk to them. My dad was like that. My dad was like, never talk to the IRS, son. Once you talk to the IRS, you're on their radar now, and that's how you get audited. That is not how you get audited, right? If you owe the IRS money, just call them, explain what's going on. They will help you out. They will work with you. Now, you're going to be on hold a long time, but they will work with you. You've got to address those things. One of the things that might be facing here in a few years is you're out of schools, you might have student loans. You've got to pay attention to that, right? They can garnish wages. They can garnish tax returns. You don't want that to happen. Work with them. Next are unsecured debts. This is when you've borrowed money and there's some sort of collateral. That could be a car loan or a home loan, right? And we already know that, like rent, mortgage, that's at the top. Car notes in the middle. So you can kind of see how how these obligations might move up higher on your list. Other secured debts might include like you've pawned something or you've done a title loan. Those are predatory lending practices. And I would ask you to call me before you engage in a title loan or pawn something. We can talk about alternatives. And last are unsecured debts. This is when you've borrowed money, but there is no collateral. For most people, this is going to be like a credit card or a personal loan. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pay those, but those do tend to come last because there's the least ramifications on that. And then after all that is done, then you prioritize your wants, right? Start with your needs and obligations, and then you get to prioritize your wants. Does anybody, I'll pause again here. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions about priority spending?
Yeah, yes, there's a question in the chat. Carmen's asking, is it wrong to try to pay off your debts first and not put much into savings?
Boy, that's a great question. And there's a few different schools of thought on that, but myself and I would say the majority of financial planners will say you do want to establish an emergency savings before you aggressively go after your debt. And the reason for that is that let's say you don't have any savings and you work hard, you pay off all your credit card debt and you're so excited, you decide to go out and celebrate and you have one too many and you wreck your car on the way home. Now you're back in debt again, right? If you can get about $1,000 set aside, minimum $2,000 if possible, and just let that sit there for emergencies, and then go after your debt, it'll keep you from needing to tap back into the debt, into the credit as emergencies arise. Now, most financial planners will tell you that you should have 3 to 6 months salary set aside for emergencies. The emergency they're really talking about there is loss of job, right? Global pandemics, things that we've all been through a global pandemic, and hopefully that we never have another one again, right? Happens like every 100 years. Job loss, that's scary, right? But that's pretty infrequent. The more frequent emergencies are, insurance deductible for health, insurance deductible for your car or your home, unexpected car repairs, that kind of thing. The need to travel quickly due to death or illness in the family. Traveling quickly like that's often expensive. Trying to buy airfare at the last minute. $1,000 to $2,000 should cover that. I would say set that money aside first and then go after the debt. Any other questions out there? Comments? All right. If you remember on the previous slide, I said everything should, when you subtract your income from your expenses, you should have a positive number. Well, what if you don't, right? What if that number is not positive? The ends don't meet. There's really only 3 things you can do. You can work on increasing your income, which ultimately everybody here is, right? Because you're in school. I would assume you're here to get into a situation where you increase your income. You can reduce your expenses, right? But really, the best situation is to do both. If you can figure out how to increase your income and reduce your expenses, that's really the best way. People tend to focus on one or the other. Say, man, if I just made more money, all my financial problems would be solved. But actually, that's usually not true because they actually end up increasing their expenses. They don't reduce them. Or people just say, well, I'll just stop doing anything fun for the rest of my life. That's not really realistic either, right? That's not a good way to reduce expenses. If you can kind of do a combo there, that's a way to really make hay. All right, so now I've sold you all, you're on board. You're like, absolutely, Dan, this is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. I thought Disney World was exciting, but budgeting, that's incredibly exciting. I can't wait. Let's start budgeting. And you write down a budget. What do you do with it after that? Well, it's not worth the paper it's written on if it's not followed. So you do need to kind of track your progress by tracking your expenses. And that actually does quite a few things for us. So I do want to talk about tracking. And man, if you thought budgeting was exciting, wait till you hear about tracking. You're going to need to write down everything that you spend money on. And I don't care if you do it on a notepad. I don't care if you do it in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care if you use, what they call fintech out there, um, financial software, financial technology, whatever, whatever basis that you use should be one that you're going to use, right? If you're like, oh, I'll get this fancy Excel spreadsheet, but I hate Excel, then don't use Excel, right? Just jot everything. If you're a person who writes stuff down, just put it in a notebook. I don't really care, but you do need to track. And there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost, the numbers don't lie. We lie to ourselves all the time, right? We we tell ourselves that that looks great on us, that we don't need to lose weight, everything's good, you know, uh, and that I didn't really spend money on that. It's not that we mean to, it's just kind of human nature. I'll give you an example of this couple I worked with. I used to work for a nonprofit as a financial coach before I came here to HCC, and it was a husband and wife, and they had two kids, and they had pretty good jobs. They made pretty good money, but they couldn't save. They couldn't save, and so we're trying to figure out where the money's going. I'm talking to them about it, and I asked them how much money they spent eating out, and they were like, "No, we never eat out." And I was like, "Everybody eats out," and they're like, "Not us." And I was like, "Yeah, and you?" And they're like, "No." And so I said, "Okay, well, track your expenses for a month, right? And let's see." Well, they spent an incredible amount of money eating out. I'm totally drawing blanks. I want to say it was like $700 or $800 a month that they spent eating out. Not so huge disconnect, right? Between 0 and 7 or 800. And so I think it was 800. And so here's what they really, when I asked the question, do y'all eat out? What they really heard me ask was, how often do you and your wife get a babysitter and the two of you all go out to dinner, just the two of you, to a nice restaurant, right? With like linens. And the answer to that question was never, right? But they didn't really think of like stopping, picking up Starbucks on the way to work. They didn't consider that eating out. Picking up a rotisserie chicken on the way home or a bucket of chicken. Well, we ate it at home. It wasn't eating out. Now, if you stop by a restaurant and bring food home, that's eating out, right? Kolaches are eating out. Getting sodas out of the vending machine at work, that's eating out. All that stuff adds up. The numbers don't lie, right? They had to face it. So, basically, if you don't know where your money's going, you can't make changes to it. So the best way to find out where your money's going is to track it. And this is really where I tell everybody to start. Even before budgeting, I would say track your expenses for a month. See what's really going on. And then we can adjust from there. It also gives us a realistic view of what we spend. So this couple, they were like, all right, fine, we eat out. Obviously 800 is not sustainable. So they said, we're going to cut that in half. And actually, now I'm thinking it was 700 because I remember the half number, they were going to cut it down to 350, right? And so we budgeted 350, and the next month they spent about $400. And they were kind of bummed, but I was like, no, that's awesome, right? That's awesome. You just saved $300, right? And you'll find that extra $50. It takes a little practice. You're making major lifestyle changes. And so next month they spent about $400. The next month they spent about $400. After that, they spent about $400. I was like, okay, it's time. Remember, I said goals, you got to be realistic. Don't set yourself up for failure. I was like, it's clear that $400 is y'all's number, right? Let's just budget $400. It does help your budgets become very realistic. And it gives good accountability with themselves. Jan's heard me tell this story so many times. I apologize, Jan, that you're hearing it again, but I just think it's a great illustration. So I go to work for this nonprofit. It's at like Shepherd and Washington area. I'm living out in the Jersey Village area, and at the time, 290 is under construction. Now I'm a finance guy, but I'd never tracked my own expenses before, right? But then I start financial coaching. It's a little bit different what I had been doing, and I see the value in it. I was like, oh, this is actually makes a lot of sense. And you know what? I'm not going to do something I'm not going to ask my clients. I'm not going to ask my clients to do something I'm not willing to do. So, honey, you and I are going to start tracking our expenses. I tell my wife, all right, so I put this sheet together. We're going to write down every night. We're going to write down what we spent money on. Now, unbeknownst to her, since I've been working at this job, I had stopped by the Jack in the Box across the street to pick up a large curly fry and a large Diet Coke for my arduous journey home through all that construction. Gosh darn it, that's a long way to drive without a large curly fry and a large Diet Coke, and I certainly know I deserved it, and it's only $5. It's only $5, right? Aren't I worth $5? We can justify anything. Of course I'm worth $5. But let's think about that for a sec. right? That's $5 a day, Monday through Friday. That's $25 a week. That's $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. That's that emergency savings account right there. I've been doing this for a while. And then the moment I had to start writing this down, I stopped. I was like, Monday, I was like, $5 Jack in the Box. Tuesday, $5 Jack in the Box. Went, so I can't write this down again. It gave me instant accountability to myself. The tracking held me to spending money better. Anybody have any questions about tracking or thoughts on that? All right. Once you track, you are going to need to take a look at it though. All right. You need to examine what's going on. So this is a graphic I stole from the FDIC. It's a little outdated with the numbers. I get that. But the idea here being, let's look at Lynn. What do we notice about Lynn? Anybody? Just unmute yourself and see something that you see on there.
Food.
Food, yeah. Grocery shopping or eating out? She eats out a lot, right?
Yeah.
You know, breakfast, coffee, lunch, soft drink, drinks with friends. She goes grocery shopping, but I don't know why. You know, after grocery shopping, she goes out and goes home to dinner, right? Bacon and eggs. She's also putting stuff on her credit card and stuff that's not emergencies. Now you could argue, say, well, damn, $46 for gas. Like if she can't get to work, you know, and she doesn't have any gas and she doesn't have any money in her checking account. Okay, that's fine. Put it on your credit card. You know, and same thing with her groceries, right? But she's paying cash for movies. She's paying cash for bacon and egg midnight dinner. If you're putting necessities on a credit card and you're paying cash for other things, that should be a warning signal to you, right? The other thing I'll point out is none of these are very large expenses.
Yeah.
There's no budget buster on here. It's the little things that tend to kill us. Those little things add up. In fact, this adds up to $217.28, right? The other thing I'll point out to you is this is only taking place over 2 days. People say there's no way people do this over 2 days. Yes way. Happens all the time. This is pretty normal. It adds up and it adds up quick. So, you know, don't just track. Examine your tracking so you can understand what's going on and how you can make changes. Okay. The last thing I'll remind you is that it's your money. Don't let anybody else but you decide what to do with it. Get in control of it by tracking and budgeting. All right. Does anybody have any questions for me, comments, thoughts?
Everybody's talking about their holdups. I said I was Starbucks. Somebody said Dutch Brothers. Others said Amazon, Boba.
Yeah, I know. I'm lucky that I don't like coffee, but Starbucks is brutal, man. I know Janice drinks like 6 coffees a day. Can we get a copy of the slide deck? You know what? Let me put one together. That I'll because there's a few things in here that I didn't do. Let me take them out and I'll get those to Jana, and she can send this out. Let's see. I'm trying to keep up here. Sometimes I go overboard when I'm shopping with my daughter. Yeah. Kids can certainly put some pressure on you for that. I would say the trick to that is when you go shopping, you have a budget, you have a plan. We're going to spend this much money. You know, and that's that. Stick to the budget. Everything should be budgeted out like that. And it's hard to say no, but it's also a great opportunity to talk to your children. Hey, we have a budget. You know, this is why we have a budget, and we're going to stick to it when we go out today. They don't need to know the ins and outs of all your finances, but it's a good opportunity for you to give them a teaching moment.
Hello, everybody.
In terms of, because I saw a few people gave the thumbs up there to the Starbucks and stuff. I just brew your own coffee. That one's I know it's not as good. It's not as fine. Um, but save that money, or just do it once a week. Shamanica says it's hard for women, I mean me, LOL, to stick to a budget when I'm at the grocery store. Okay, so first off, I'm gonna myth bust right here. I have no physical evidence to back this up, but what I do have is 15 years coaching experience. Or Tiana says make my Starbucks at home. Oh, that helps. That warms my heart. Men are more spendy than women. I know that that's not the myth, but I'm here to tell you, uh, I mm, especially video games, man. These men are just throwing money at video games, and I think so many men feel that they're more entitled to it than women are. They like to give their wives a hard time, but uh, I men are much worse about it. Okay, at the grocery store, again, have a list before you go in. That's totally helpful. But here's something to really consider. And I don't do this. I'll admit, I like walking aisles at the grocery store and looking at things, but that's how you get in trouble, right? Curbside pickup is awesome because it's only going to be what's on your list. They're only going to now, and I understand for women that sometimes there are some issues with buying some things that you're like, that's not acceptable for a substitute. Okay, go in and buy those. But just for your regular stuff, curbside, it will save you so much money. All right, making your Starbucks at home. Yay. Yeah. Janice says order online, pick it up. Yes, nowadays it's hard to budget for groceries because now you can find clothes, shoes. Yeah. Like stores like Walmart, Target, right? You can just go buy everything, Costco. Again, just have a plan before you go in. I would tell my family sometimes before we go, like, I'm dating myself here, go into the mall for Christmas shopping. I know nobody does mall Christmas shopping anymore, but I'd be like, we're like Navy SEALs, right? We have a plan. We're going to infiltrate, execute, exfiltrate, in and out, 10 minutes, right? Just pay no attention. Have a plan whenever you go out shopping. Camila says, yes, I do once a week, and that's my compromise. Oh, I'm assuming we're talking about the coffee. Before it was 3 times a week, and now I get a small, not medium. I will never be able to completely let go, but I've been drinking season since I was 9. First off, that's not healthy. And Camila clarifies, she's talking about the frappes and the boba. No, I'm teasing about not healthy since 9. But yes, right, that's a great way to compromise. Instead of going cold turkey never works. I'm going to just cut back, right? Instead of going every day, I'll go on Fridays. That'll be my reward for making it through a week, right? I think those are great ways to have some success. I feel I like walking the aisles for steps and looking for deals. I ask myself sometimes, do I really need? Yeah. I always hit the clearance, the manager specials, and I end up throwing stuff in my cart that I wouldn't have normally bought. And I try to convince myself, oh, I'm saving money. I'm not really saving money because I spent it. But, there's nothing really wrong with if you're using to get your steps. And, when our daughter was younger, hello there, kitty cat. When our daughter was younger, for my wife and I, that was almost like a date night, just the two of us getting out and going to the grocery store. But again, bear in mind what you're doing. I'm here not to just spend money without a plan. Have a list before you go to the store. The list is helpful in that it should keep you from going back a second time because you forgot something. But more importantly, the list is there to keep you on track. Janice says, even out at a restaurant, have a plan, no appetizers or desserts, order water. Yeah, and try to, again, that's another great thing. I love eating out, but try to say, look, we're only going to eat out on one day a week, or special occasions. Certainly stay away from alcoholic drinks. Not that I'm a teetotaler. I do enjoy an adult beverage, but I will enjoy them at home now because it is out of control how expensive those are at restaurants. And even sodas are now running like $2.50, $3. And some places, I don't want to out them, but their name rhymes with House of Pies. No free refills anymore on their fountain drinks. Drinks are ways that restaurants are really just gouging people. So yeah, stick with water. And you know, if you have kids, have that dessert. We'll have dessert at home. Have that conversation before you go out to the restaurant. Camila says, don't go shopping when hungry. Absolutely not. And generally, I would say too that if you can shop on the outsides of the store, that's where your Whole Foods are. Now, obviously, there's things you need to get in the middle, but dollar for dollar on your caloric intake, Whole Foods tend to be better than processed foods. And beware of end cap stuff. That's all marketing, the stuff on the end caps. And when I say Whole Foods, bear in mind, I'm not talking about the store. Please, God, don't shop there.
Expensive.
There's a reason why they call it whole paychecks, right? Incredibly expensive. I do love some of our alternative grocery stores here in Houston. Joe V's, if you're near a Joe V's, it is awesome. And it is owned by HEB. So you're getting HEB quality at discounted prices. Aldi's, I'm a big fan of Aldi's. Both those places, you'll have to sack your own groceries. No big deal, right? HEB is the best. We can argue about that. HEB is not as affordable as they like to act like they are. I'll make that argument with Walmart too. Walmart's not as cheap as people think it is. Yeah, Camila goes on to add Joe V's. Joe V's is awesome. And Aldi's does. Aldi's has great vegetables. They have great meats. Again, they really cut down on your options. But you know what? You don't need to choose between 20,000 toothpastes. They all do that. A good friend of mine's a dentist. I was asking him about toothpaste. He's like, just get the ones that are cheapest. They're all the same. So there you go. We're about out of time. Does anybody have any final thoughts or questions? I hope this has been helpful as we start the new year. But watch your Shamanic says it's been awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. That makes me feel warm on this cold day. Thank you all for your time and good luck this semester.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you at the next one, and we will see you soon. Bye. Stay warm.
Thank you, Jana.
You're welcome.